To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Welcome to the End of the Hood Show. Thanks for joining us.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, Hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. What's caught your attention in the automotive world?
Well, just, people pick up this show at different times. We're live here in our local station right now, and the news is this morning, not the news we want. New record gas prices again.
Yeah.
It's daily, isn't it? Hasn't it? How long
it's-
has it been a daily increase?
I don't know. It's ridiculous is what it is.
12, 14 days, something like that?
It's ridiculous. That's all it is. But we just do want to be what we're supposed to be here. I give presentations or I do things, and I tell people with this show, we want to help you, the Hoodies, be good consumers of the automobile. And we may not have the expertise of a hot rod show on that very specific thing, or we may not have the expertise of some other people, but we got a fair amount of knowledge, and we like to help people learn about their vehicles and get good ideas on how they're going to fix stuff and what they're going to do and what not to do. And I think a what not to do would probably be in line for the subject of fuel prices.
Right.
Last time prices went up, the gadgets came out of the woodwork to try to help people save fuel. Hydrogen generators, magnets, special pellets you put in your fuel tank.
That stuff's showing up on YouTube now. Run your generator off of hydrogen. No, it won't work.
And the Federal Trade Commission at that time stepped in and said, enough. Enough of these untested products, enough of these things that are being put out there. And it's so much easier for people to get an audience with this stuff.
Sure.
With, whether it be TikTok or YouTube or whatever social media platform you want, you can find a vein pretty easily to tap into when it comes to talking about high fuel prices. The other day we were down in our inventory building where our staff inventories the incoming vehicles. We call it kind of triage. We separate out which vehicles are going which direction, what's going to happen with them, how much inventory time is going to get spent on them. It's a process that we go through. And while we were down there, my dad, he comes through and he thought he needed to interrupt us, which is not uncommon. And he usually has something interesting to talk about. So he had a box of things in his hand, and he goes, "What is this?" And there was 13 of us standing around these vehicles, test inventorying. And so all of a sudden, we just got squirreled into a 15-minute lost meeting.
Sure.
But what we're looking at here was this container, and I brought one with me right here, and this one happened to be Energy Cell Automotive Optimized. And we didn't know what was in it because we hadn't opened any yet. We looked on the website, and we really couldn't find anything that told us anything. And it was heavy, but it felt like it could have been a container and so we were guessing what was in it, didn't really know. And so finally, I'm like, okay, we got to open one up. And he didn't want to open one up because they could be valuable.
Sure, sure.
So we don't want to tamper with it if it could be valuable.
Mint, new in box.
And so we open it up, and it's talking about easy installation, increases fuel economy, increases engine efficiency, reduces emissions, never wears out, no maintenance. What do you think we got in the container, guys? It's a little bit heavy. Got some weight to it.
Is that one of those stupid gadgets that you plug in either to your oxygen sensor or mass airflow sensor?
No, it's not. What it is, it is highly constructed stainless steel embedded magnets that you can put around and screw around your fuel lines. So it's it's the magnets that I saw at the Spencer Clay County Fair when I was 5 years old, that people were putting the magnet bullets on the fuel lines in a more professional package.
Yeah. It looks nice.
You want to hold one? I mean,
I do.
I got to find a use for these. It sure as heck isn't to save fuel economy.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at that pile of garbage you've got there in your hand, I'm thinking, how would I, on a modern day car, now really, if this did work, how could I get it installed on there? Because there's not much of a fuel line that's straight or metal on much of these cars. So I don't even know how
I don't
do
know
it.
that it doesn't need to be metal that bad because you're going to attach it with these screws that they give
To
you.
itself.
And
right?
you've got foam padding and double-sided tape. And there are some instructions here. Should we look at the instructions and see what it says?
Please.
That is so lame.
It
I wonder
says,
if I put this on my wrist, will it make my hand feel better? You know, like those
well,
magnet things?
It
Yeah.
might. It's possible.
Get some Velcro. I'll just
Don't get it
strap
too
around.
close to your head, Russ. That would make me a little bit nervous.
Whoa, I'm getting dizzy.
Probably make your eyes cross.
Whoa, that's not right. Maybe one on each side.
Yeah. It says that the unit comes partially assembled in 3 identical pieces and stacked for easy shipment. It will require some additional simple assembly. Step 1. Remove backing from foam padding strips and apply to the face of each magnet. Step 2. Due to the powerful magnetic field, assembly is accomplished by turning each piece perpendicular to the other while inserting the first screw and lock nut. Step 3. After insertion of first screw, rotate slide to align holes for second screw insertion. Step 4. Repeat steps 1 and 2 to attach the third assembly to the unit. Leave one seam open to allow mounting over the fuel line. Tighten screws securely. So you make a kaleidoscope basically around the fuel line to surround the fuel line. And completely assembled unit is triangular with magnetics facing inward. And so then you locate the fuel line. If you're having trouble locating the fuel line, have a mechanic mark it for you. I'm sure, Russ, what would you do if somebody came in and said, hey, can you mark where my fuel line is so I can put my magnets on?
No, please save your money. You're being this is really bad. I don't want to call you dumb, but, well, you did buy these. Just
I wonder
please
what they
don't do that.
cost. Did you find them?
Well, I did find there is a patent number on here.
Yeah.
And I looked up the patent number, and it is for a fuel ion modifier from 1966. That's what this new.
I was born in '69, so that Clay County Fair remnants is coming about right.
This is new.
Horrible.
These are brand new construction, but the patent it refers to that is printed on there is from 1966.
Here's
to
some.
align the ions
People
in your
will take advantage
hydrocarbon
of
fuels.
people whenever there is something of, in like gas prices are high, so people are willing to try anything. This is
says,
not good.
Magnets can damage some electronic components. Be sure to keep the unit at a safe distance from these during and after installation. Please verify your mileage manually, as results are known to vary with onboard computer mileage calculators. If I was unwise enough to put these on my car and I wanted to tell my friends about it, I am going to drive like a saint.
Yeah.
And I am going to get 3 miles to the gallon better. And I'm going to tell everybody how it worked. Because I'm sure not going to tell them I put these magnets on and it was a joke.
It was dumb, yeah.
Yeah, so the warranty, though, the warranty. What do they do with the warranty? Got quite a warranty on it.
I bet.
What do you think the warranty says, guys?
I have no idea.
Well, first, Russ, you're going to love this. Your car may require a brief breaking-in period before measurable gains in fuel economy or engine performance will occur. Gains may be attached by type and age of vehicle, driving conditions, and vehicle operator driving habits. Because the unit does not change the mechanical configuration of the vehicle, the warranty is not attached in any way.
Oh.
So, but the warranty says that it's basically, I don't know, I'm not going to read all this because we've said enough. It talks about if your magnets fall apart.
Sure.
There's no guarantees of performance. It says if your magnets fall apart and the construction fails, we'll get you new ones.
I will say this: it is a very heavy, well-constructed
It is.
magnet.
It is
that
well constructed.
Making me nervous to set down anywhere in the studio because everywhere in the studio, this magnet could have.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to use it on my refrigerator because it would scratch it. But I might use it. We've got a door that blows open in the wind, and I've got a couple speaker magnets up
Do
there.
you need 2 of them?
Yeah, I could probably just put this right on the frame, and it would help.
Here, I'll
keep the
get
door
you 2 of
closed.
them, Russ, so we can get you.
I'll take those to the shop and actually put them on the door.
But the guarantee is this: if for any reason you are dissatisfied with the energy cell, return the unit. Here we go. Pretty strong magnets. They just stuck together. Return the unit in its original container along with the original purchase receipt, postage paid to them, and within 60 days of purchase for a refund. So you got to take your time to break the car in, get it to work, but then if it doesn't work within 60 days, you got to get her back and get your money back. So
Long story short, don't do this.
don't do this. Don't do this.
866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here on the Under the Hood Show. I tried to get to the website of that, and it was blocked. So that's a no-go. I can't find out more about this company, dang it.
Was it blocked by FortiGate?
Yes, FortiGuard, yes.
FortiGuard? All right, sorry, that's our firewall. What was it blocked for?
Pornography. Which, by the way...
So the magnets didn't work, now they're trying something different.
I want to just tell your IT guy that now I feel like I have to explain. Like we should send him a note why it got blocked, you know?
Really, this energy cell company, it's bad.
Yeah, don't do it. Oh. If you want to get better gas mileage,
drive better.
Tire pressure,
put air in your tires.
Try and drive better.
Tune your car up.
If you normally set your cruise at 4 miles an hour, the speed limit, over the speed limit or whatever, set it for 2 miles less, and it'll make a difference. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Kansas and talk to Joe. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Joe, what can we do for you? Are you there? Oh, I know. Now let's try it. Joe, are you there?
I am.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. I have 4 F350 diesels. They range from low miles to high miles. They've been very trouble-free, but I am aware of the issues that the CP4 high-pressure pump can cause by sending debris through the injector lines and trashing the injectors. And there is a disaster prevention kit out there, aftermarket, and I'm not sure what it amounts to, but I think it's a bypass and maybe a filter.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on this? Is it worth the cost?
Well, worth the cost has got to be up to you. If it saves you from having to put injectors in when you have a pump fail, it's definitely worth the cost.
Russ, give a quick explanation for the rest of our hoodies what he's talking about.
So if you have a modern diesel with a CP3, CP4, you've got an injection pump on it. It's a high-pressure pump that has no, basically, it's not made with rubber seals inside. It's used with metallic components that are at such a close tolerance that if you put these two pieces of metal together, they don't leak backwards. They squeeze fuel out one direction to give you thousands of pounds.
Is it
of
like
fuel
30,000 pounds per square inch or something like that?
Yeah, I mean you're talking thousands of pounds of fuel pressure. So if you put anything in between those rollers that's not clean, that's why we want to change these fuel filters in these diesels so often. It's going to damage them. And then you're going to have other issues, like you're going to have pieces of this pump coming apart, and then that metal is going to continue to...
It's like shrapnel at that point.
Once you get a piece out of it, it's going to continue to spall off of that pump and get into your injectors and your lines and your tank. And they make these kits. There's got to be hundreds of them out there, different designs and things for different models and makes and engine sizes and vehicles and things like that. And they're hopefully keeping that, anytime there is a problem in there, any kind of disaster, let's call it, keeping that metal from going through the rest of the components and contaminating your fuel tank, your fuel injection injectors, because we're talking thousands of dollars to replace injectors. So if the pump fails, big deal. You put a new pump on it, you flush out that part of the system, you got your filters in there, the whole bit, you're good to go. But if you lose the pump and you get it back into your tank, it is very common, especially on the GM trucks, to replace everything. Tank, lines, pumps, injectors, all of it.
You're talking $10,000, give or take.
Yeah, the last one we did, I think, was $13,000 to replace, and that was 2 years ago before all the prices went up and the parts were so hard to get. So, yeah, do your research online. Look at the forums for people that have actually put them on their own Fords and see what they are saying, how they felt about it. And not, I don't want to hear from the guy who says, I put one on, I've got 20 trucks. I put one on all mine. It's great. Works great. No, I want to hear from you after you said, I put one on one of my trucks, or maybe 10 of them, it doesn't matter, and I had a failure. And look how much money it saved me. Because just like with a company, you can have 100 companies out there that say they're all the best, and they have the best warranties in the world. I got a 1,000,000-year warranty, but until they have a problem and you have to use it and you see what the service was, you don't know what you're going to get. So, I like to see reviews where people say, I had a bad experience with this company, but they took care of me.
Mm-hmm.
That's better for me than I have 1,000 of them that say, oh, they were the best. No problems.
Worked great.
Yeah, I want to know, what are they going to do if there is a problem? Because, the problems are usually low with people and companies and products. But if there is a product failure, I want to know. And also look at that company. I'm not familiar with their warranty. If you've got their full system on there and it's professionally installed and done right, will they cover extra problems? If it does fail and their system doesn't help it, if it does contaminate the injectors, will they cover anything, or do they just limit their liability to their product?
Does that help you out there, Joe?
I don't think they will cover it. We work on a fair amount of diesel pickup, and we see this, but typically it's poor maintenance, like you say, failure to change filters. And if with poor maintenance, those CP4s will run maybe 100,000 miles, but we've seen them run 300 with good maintenance. But these kits are relatively inexpensive. They're a couple $100, and I'm thinking if they help at all, maybe we should start encouraging these to go on pickups.
Exactly. If they do help at all, that's a main thing.
So we don't have any personal experience to say.
When we're talking about $10,000-$15,000 or more for a complete injection system, a $200 gamble seems like a pretty good thing. And then when if you're working on enough of them, you're going to see a failure.
My only fear would be is if it is some sort of filtration, and it somehow or another causes a
lack of fuel.
It becomes a filter in a sense.
Do you have to keep its filter clean
Yes.
continuously?
Does it have a filter?
Right.
So you don't start causing restrictions to the flow of fuel. I kind of wonder how they would perform that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've got to keep your regular filters clean, and if those filters are clean, they should be filtering it to enough of a micron level, low enough that it's going to keep that other filter at least not having to change it near as often, I would think.
And make sure you practice good fuel quality, and the additives we think are very important to the fuel. To make sure you get.
And it's very important when you're changing, for everybody listening, when you're changing a fuel filter, if you got a diesel and the outside of that filter is dirty, you've got to clean it off and make sure it's completely clean before you take the filter off. Because it'd be like doing surgery on a person that's covered in mud. You want to clean them off first. Maybe the inside of that filter's clean, but that outside, I've seen a lot of people take them off, screw them back on, and they get dirt inside of the filter housing.
That's a good point for people who are doing, especially for their first time, if they're doing it themselves or they're, Joe, thanks very much for the call. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150. This is the Under the Hood Show.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
866-594-4150. Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. Remember that during the show, we will give out a hoodie to a caller, courtesy of our friends at Universal Technical Institute.
UTI.edu. UTI.edu is your one-stop, do-all training, get you ready to be a professional technician school. They have trainers that are in communication with the people at the manufacturers. They are all the places that you need to know about. If you're going to work on a Ford, you need to know right from the Ford people how to work on their products. GM, Chrysler, Honda, Toyota, all these companies, they're working right with Universal Technical Institute in order to get technicians up to the speed they need to be at to work on the modern vehicles today. So check out uti.edu. It could be a great career for you that you may not even know about yet.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to John. You're on the Under the Hood Show. John, what can we do for you?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
I have got an 05 F-150 the 5.4 in. It's got probably about 50,000 miles on it. I decided to purchase a tune for this thing, and I put it in, and I had some pre-detonation. I've talked to Russ about this. And I pulled the tune back out. I've kind of played with it a little bit, and it just seems now that the pre-detonation is just starting to get progressively worse. And the factory tune is back in. Yesterday I had a new fuel pump put in because my fuel gauge was being intermittent, and I didn't know how long ago I had switched fuel pumps, so I just be proactive. I put a fuel pump / fuel gauge sender in, and now it pre-detonates really bad on the factory tune. Are there knock sensors in that thing that could be going bad, or what do you think?
There are knock sensors in the vehicle, but I'd also like to read the data from it while driving down the road and see what it's telling me. I'm wondering if it's running leaner than it should, or if it's running, the temperature is not running like it should. It sounds like there's a sensor that is still, it's failed, but it's within its range, causing this to happen. By changing the fuel pump.
The temperature comment that you made is interesting, because in the wintertime, it just seemed like it only did it after it warmed up.
Mm-hmm. The hotter the engine is, that's going to change your fuel and your ignition curve when it gets hotter, but also a hotter engine will detonate more. If that thing is carboned up a lot inside, that carbon will, at a hotter temperature, it's gonna detonate more, because you're going to get pre-ignition inside of the engine. It sounds like
that thing is carboned up. I'll be surprised.
It shouldn't be. I'd be surprised too, because it's a 5.4. That just doesn't happen.
How many miles are on it?
You guys put it in 50,000 miles ago. It runs great.
There's no way it's got carbon in then, because we pull them out with 200,000 miles and they just don't have carbon build up in the cylinders or on the spark plugs or anything, not at least to cause that kind of a detonation. But
you'd have to have enough to change the volume of the cylinder almost,
Yeah, the problem is long-term detonation will damage an engine. And long-term, a month of it will start. At this point, I would not be surprised if you stuck a camera in there that you'd be seeing, damage starting on the top of the pistons and valves and stuff like that. So you got to figure out what that detonation issue is. I mean, it could be a bad computer. It could be a knock sensor issue. It could be an engine temperature issue. There's lots of different things it could be. Problem finding detonation can be on an engine can be very difficult. You can look at all the data and still not find it. I've had shops chase it around and around and around and spend hundreds of dollars, if not thousands, and not get it. And it may even require looking inside of cylinders, and so you got to look and see, is there an issue in there. The other thing that's important too is, what about the catalytic converters? Have they ever been changed on this vehicle? And if not, have you checked back pressure? Because if you are starting to get back pressure, let's say you've got, it should be no more than a half a pound at a steady 2,000 RPM. And if this thing has got like a pound of back pressure, it's going to run pretty good, but it's going to detonate like crazy. You're going to be raising exhaust temperatures and causing that. And we've had a couple engines where people have come in and the engine has been destroyed, and we checked it out and found out that after a new engine was put in, it's had a converter plug up. And converters can be fine one day, and 3 or 4 months later, you check the pressure again, and it's starting to build pressure. So whenever there's a change, it's kind of like when we go to a doctor. If there's a change and you say, hey, this is not normal, I'm losing a little bit of power, or, like a person, I'm feeling a little weird, something's just not right, let's go get a check before something serious happens. That little bit of power loss or detonation, things that are just not right, check engine light, they need to be checked and addressed quickly to find out what's going on. But the more I think about it, I see this a lot on the Ford engine. I see it on the 6.2s, on the Chevy, with detonation caused when everything else looks pretty good. A lot of times it's caused by a catalytic converter that's starting to plug up and increase the back pressure.
So check there next, maybe?
I would start with that. I would pull the front O2s out, the ones closest to the engines by the manifolds, put a pressure gauge in there, and measure the pressure of that exhaust and see what we're at.
John, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Lyle. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Lyle, what can we do for you?
Good morning. I was wondering on this fuel economy thing you're talking about, what your take is on these high-flow air filters like the K&Ns. So, I've got an old Chevelle. I quarter-mile race a couple times a year, and I've had a K&N on there for years, and I took it off, and I had an increase of about a quarter second with a paper filter. It ran better. Just kind of wondering, I maybe over-oiled the thing, but just wondering your opinion on it.
A clean paper filter will always outflow, a good one will always outflow a oiled gauze type filter if it has got too much oil on it. Those K&N filters, Spectre, all the companies that make air filters that are an oil gauze type material, they are meant to be kept clean, of course, but once they're cleaned, have just about so little oil on them that you can't even tell there's oil on it. They shouldn't be bright red or blue, depending on the color of the oil you're putting on it. And I see more of them come into our own shop that are way too over-oiled than I don't know if I've ever seen one that was under-oiled, except for the one that somebody had put on years ago that they brought it in and it never had any oil on it. It actually came not oiled, and it was a generic Chinese one, and they just never put any oil on it. And I said, hey, this is supposed to have oil. And you just lightly put it on, because if you can imagine anything that's oily around your house, your shop, your car, even the tiniest bit of oil, it's going to start to attract dust. And that's what the filter's for. That super small amount of oil is going to draw the dust to it and prevent it from getting into the engine, and that's going to be your filter. So
I'm picturing like a brownie pan.
there you go.
Just a little Pam.
Yep, just enough. Now, those filters, they will flow more because they're designed to. They've got a greater surface area, and they will flow more if they're oiled properly. But you shouldn't expect a great mileage increase by putting one on compared to a clean paper filter. They will flow better at higher RPM, such as your race car.
It says race car is engineered for speed, and anything you can do to add to that is going to help because it's tuned for power.
I have K&N filters in all my cars, and the reason I have them is so that I don't have to change my paper. I don't want to waste the paper. I don't want to be throwing out the filters. I just clean the filters off. I put them back in, but they have almost no oil on them, basically. They're super clean. And the way you find out, well, is it enough oil to protect my engine? When you pull that air filter off, if you stick your finger in that air horn and you wipe the inside of it and it's clean, there's no dust getting through there. If you wipe it and it's dirty, you don't have enough oil on it. But I don't think I've ever seen one that was dirty on the inside where something got past the filter.
If you wipe the inside of it and it's sticky, that means you're putting too much oil on it because it's pulling through.
And that can get onto the mass airflow sensor, change your fuel trim,
so much. Yep,
damage your transmission.
It'll change how the tranny shifts. To put one in and to say, I'm going to do this and expect my fuel economy to improve, it is a possibility, but I don't think most people have the maintenance wherewithal to truly get the efficiency out of it that it takes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
How much are paper filters? Is it
paper filters can be right now. I've purchased them this week for as low as $8, and I've had some as high as $25, depending on the type. Now there are a couple that are like $60 when you're talking about diesels, but for your typical car, like your car, Chris, every car you own, all three or four, four of them, the paper filters, they're like $8 to $12. Full retail.
And the one that does have a K&N filter on it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Russ, I got to ask you quick before we go to the next call. You drove through the Haboob, the ratio. You drove right through it. How dirty was your air cleaner after that?
I looked at it about a week ago, and it wasn't like time to change.
I've had a few people I talked to, and
good question.
Their air cleaners were just incredibly gross after that event that we had here in the eastern part of the state. You drove right through it. That's why I was wondering what yours was like.
It was pretty cloudy, but I had cleaned that air filter 2 weeks before, so.
But like cabin air filters, other air filters, make sure you check those if you were in this,
driving during.
Yeah,
right?
It's not even.
I mean,
you could get up inside the air intake area of the cabin air filter and your house filter. I mean, there was we had an amazing amount of dirt in the
We've
air.
put several
Amazing.
on in the last month, so,
Yeah,
you
so-
know, that may be where it came from.
If you've seen any of the pictures that come across eastern South Dakota back March or May 13th, was it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it was just we had a derecho, and the cloud that generated, they called it a haboob, or however you say it, and it's just this massive dirt cloud, and we could see it coming, just like a apocalypse.
We had plowed all the
So-
fields,
Yeah.
getting them ready for the
Crazy.
crops.
Yeah, and it was coming, and it was
wind
just this.
came.
You thought that the world was being destroyed and coming your way.
I thought Tom Cruise and the Mummy was coming after me.
Yeah, it was.
That's
so,
exactly what it looked.
Yep.
I was trying to picture what
but
that
it's
was,
but it's so gross. You know, their dirt got into everything. So filters or something, make sure you check.
Let's talk to Steven in Iowa. Steven, you're on the End of the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Good morning.
Hi.
I have a 2008 Chevy Colorado, four-door crew cab, four-wheel drive, and when I get up to speed, you know, anywhere from 45 to 65, it has a vibration. Lower speeds, it has more of a wobble. Higher speed, it has more of a vibration. I've put on 2 sets of tires. I've had them balanced by 2 different companies. I've had new shocks, front end aligned. The technicians, the mechanics can't figure it out.
You know, I would think I'd want to raise it up and turn the tires with it in the air and just make sure you don't have an axle that's bent or something in the rear, because if you did, even if the tires are balanced, if they're not turning true and smooth, it's going to shake. So, you know, you can balance an egg, but it's still going to roll awkwardly on the
egg.
roll. Yeah, exactly. On the road. Now, put it in the air, all 4 wheels off the ground, and spin each tire and watch them. Make sure the tread is perfectly level, so when it's contacting the road, it's going to be smooth. If it is, then move over to the drive shafts. Look at those. We've had a couple of these we've had to replace drive shafts in, front or rear. And they've had issues where the drive shaft had a bend in them, and I don't know where they're getting the bends because they weren't impacted by anything, but they had a wobble to them, and it was causing a vibration. And replacing that drive shaft fixed it. So look for things that look out of place. Often we find stuff not by our fancy machines and balancing and all that kind of scanners and gauges. We just put our eye on it, turn it, and say, hey, that thing's moving up and down. It's not contacting the road straight. So even a wheel that's bent a little bit, like egg-shaped,
Can I use a laser?
yes,
Okay.
to see if it's contacting.
You just want to
exactly.
use a
I
laser.
just want to use a laser, yeah.
That's all there is to it.
But yeah, try that and see what you do. But you know what? Stay on the line. Producer Doug is going to get you a hoodie, aren't you, Doug?
Oh, that's
Hi, Doug.
nice. Steven,
Yeah.
stay on the line. Universal Technical Institute gives
Brought
us a
you that hoodie.
That's right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150. This is the End of the Hood Show.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us at the Under the Hood Show. Now let's go to Texas and talk to Orrin. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Orrin, what can we do for you?
Howdy, gents. I am chasing down a noise that's been driving me crazy for probably the better part of a year. I've got a 2006 Tacoma. It's a 6-speed manual, 4-wheel drive, and let's go to a movie reference. You've probably seen Star Wars. There's a little droid on there that it looks like a box with legs, and it goes around saying gronk, gronk. That's the sound that's coming out of my car at low speed when I'm turning, typically to the left. It's much, but I can get it out of a right turn a little bit too. And it's real low speed. It's not all the way against the stop. But what I've done, my first instinct was wheel bearings, so I've replaced my front wheel bearings. That didn't fix it, so I replaced both my front CV axles. That didn't do it, so then I drained and flushed both my front and rear differentials. I've got the oil's clean, everything looks good there. So now I'm to the point where maybe I'm not hearing it right, and maybe it's coming from the rear, but at this point I just don't know. Do I replace everything down there, or is this something you've ever heard of before?
Well, we've heard of weird noises like this coming out of different vehicles, and when you get a vehicle like this and you've spent time like that, what we do in our shop is we hook up a thing we call a chassis ear, and it's basically microphones and a box, and we've got like 6 of them on the machine, and we clip them onto different places along the vehicle. We drive it, and we have a person driving and then another technician riding in the passenger seat, and he can put the headphones on and listen to each one separately until we isolate it down to that one area. And let's say we isolate it to the left rear wheel, then we're going to put most of the microphones on that wheel at different positions, trying to isolate, is it a wheel bearing? Is it the brake caliper? Is it the pads? Is it, is it a shield? What is it that's making the noise? And we'll try to isolate it and narrow it down to that. And it could be the brakes. I mean, we've had issues where the brake hardware is wearing out. The brake pads are wearing out. Something's vibrating in there, causing that noise. And when you turn and it leans one way or the other, the wheel bearings, even if they're in good shape, they're still going to deflect slightly and push on the pad. And when that happens, it can make noise. So, that's something to look at. But I would say at this point, if you've done all that work and you spent a lot of money, I would definitely see if you can talk to a shop and ask them, do they have a tool like the Chassis Ears, Snap-on makes ours, that would allow you to
Orrin might need
it
some
out.
Carlson brake hardware.
You know what I was going to say? We've got a giveaway from our partners over at Carlson Quality Brake Hardware. So that may be what you need for yours. But this, as part of their new brake job completion kit, which they're promoting this. They're commemorating the new brake job completion kit. We're going to give away a Carlson Quality Brake Parts swag bag, and you're going to get a Carlson hat, a Fit Happens T-shirt, a Carlson first aid kit. You got to be careful when you're doing those brake jobs. You might hit your hand with a hammer or something. I don't know. But you're going to get the first aid kit, a Carlson chop light, Carlson's 5-in-1 pen. It's got a level built into it, and of course the Carlson sanitizer stick, because you got to keep things clean. But
Orrin, hold on. I'm going to put you on hold.
yeah, we're going to put you back on hold. But get into a shop where they can use some Chassis Ears to listen to that. I think it's going to narrow it down a lot faster than trying to just change parts.
And I wish you could see when Orrin called and started talking about brakes, if you could have seen everybody's face light up, because we knew we had.
Yeah, we just said, hey, we got to do this brake giveaway.
Yeah,
And
that was.
who are we going to give it to?
That was lucky.
And I saw your guys' light up when he made a Star Wars reference that I was instantly out of the call on what the noise sounded like, because I have no idea what that noise is.
I know it. I watched
You
it.
guys know it, and you probably know what the little critter's called.
Is it an R4? I think he's talking about the R4 from the first movie.
No,
But
I was out on that point.
Yeah, I'm out on that too.
no, it wouldn't be the R4. The box is not the R4.
Well,
Didn't he say
R4 is
it?
more like an R2.
this is going to drive Russ just a little bit crazy,
Yep.
and he will figure it out.
We'll know this by hour 2.
We'll know this in 5 minutes.
866-594-4150. Let's go to North Dakota and talk to Josh. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Josh, what can we do for you?
Morning, guys. I'm a trucker, so I'm kind of a long-time binge listener. Learned a lot from you.
Thanks.
I got a question for you about a 2020 Ford Explorer. It's a new realm for me. I'm used to all-wheel drive cars, and I know you put all 4 tires on when you do that, but this Explorer is a 4-wheel drive. I don't quite understand what that is. What does that mean for putting on all 4 tires, or can you get away with 2 tires? And then my other question about that car is, since it's a new realm, is what are the things I need to watch and take care of on this car? It belongs to my girlfriend.
Okay, I just want to make sure that because it's an easy thing to get screwed up. You have a 2020 Ford Explorer, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive. I'll address that first.
Well, the 4-wheel drive, what switch?
Okay.
The switch on your dash, does it say 2, 4, 4 low, and neutral? Is that what it says?
No, it doesn't. It's down on the center console, and it's like drive brain selection or something.
Okay,
It's not
and
a
what are-
Probably
4 high,
both.
4
Yeah, what's your choices there you got?
I'm not in it. I think it's like sand and
Yep.
I don't
It's
know.
probably
it doesn't
got
say.
both all-wheel drive
Right.
and 4-wheel drive, where you can select at the auto track selection. So it in that case, it's going to be just like either way, it's going to need the same thing for tires.
Yeah, because an all-wheel drive vehicle is typically a setup where you don't have control over the system. The system controls itself. That's typical all-wheel drive vehicle, and that's what one of those settings is going to be like. The other setting is probably more of an on-demand 4-wheel drive. It's gonna lock specifically. I think the Explorer uses electric coupling, and it's going to lock specifically the differentials at a certain percentage and hold them in place. A little more of an aggressive setup for loose materials. I would definitely get in your owner's manual and read what it says about each setting so you understand what it's designed for by that manufacturer, because I don't want to get in the weeds and tell you the wrong thing on their particular settings if they're not using specific names. But in any of those settings, your tires have to be within a very close tolerance of each other, or there's an opportunity to do damage to that four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, that system, period. It doesn't matter whether you have a four-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive. You got to have all four of your tires in very close tolerances with each other as they wear out. The rotations are important. The replacements are important. It's a big deal.
So keep them rotated.
She just got the car, and they haven't been rotated, and the back is worn down quite a bit. So that's
Keep them rotated, and as far as maintenance goes, oil changes on that engine. You've got the EcoBoost turbo in there, right?
yes.
Very super important on those. We see so many failures on those based on oil system issues that we suggest to people 3 months, 3,000 miles on that oil change. Even though the manufacturer says much longer and the sticker says much longer, I can tell you as a shop that puts in lots of these engines and as an auto recycler that sells hundreds of these engines, most of the time they're failing. It's failing because of an oil system issue that's contributed to it. So keep it changed earlier. That's the main thing you do. Otherwise, just follow the manual for the other maintenance, and you should be pretty good. It's a pretty nice vehicle.
That manual, I think a lot of people don't think of that, but when you're dealing with a vehicle, especially in this case where even if you know what the old terms were, you have to figure out what their little icons mean specific to, because it's not always the same as it used to be. Sometimes they switch up an icon and they mean one thing and it doesn't make perfect sense.
Exactly. And if you've got enough background knowledge, you can kind of look at it and think, okay, they're saying sand. That's a loose material. That's probably a locked-in four-wheel drive system. That'd be like our snow in the north if you had, a fully covered snow road. But if you can think about it a little bit, it makes sense. But I always want to go and just either go to that manufacturer's product website or to their owner's manual and say, okay, what are they specifically trying to accomplish with this mode when they start talking about modes versus names?
And then you want to get out and
then I want to try it.
Try it.
Yeah,
Josh,
for sure.
Josh, thanks very much for the call. That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivant. Hour 2 is coming up.
Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us on Under the Hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, Hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. And David has been on hold for quite a while, waiting for us to get out of the break and into the show. So let's go right to David off the top. David, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Morning, gentlemen. I'm working with a 1996 98 Oldsmobile. Car is actually 100 miles from me, but I have driven it and rode in it for quite a while. I have the symptoms that I'll relay, and then I'll listen to your advice. Pulling up to like a stop sign, it will run rough. And then when you get on the highway, the gas gauge may be pegged way above full, and then it will come back down and register the gas in it. The odometer, or the speedometer, will either register for miles and then quit. The other thing is it's my daughter's car, and I have never experienced this, but she says that that driving it, she'll pull up to a stop sign and the car may die 1 or 2 times, starts right back up, and then she can go, but she's scared to drive it for being left on the road. Thank you for listening.
You bet. Thanks. So this car is getting a little older, but where you're driving it, it is not an uncommon car to see on the road.
Yeah, we see
all the
not
time.
a ton of them, but we see a number of them.
Yeah, and he's
Delta
down,
88s, 98s, the Bonnevilles from that era.
He's down south, so this
Yeah.
cars from the 80s are still popular. With carburetors are still running around, and they're in great shape. But that instrument cluster issue, that there was a pretty common issue with those when they get over 10 years old with contacts not contacting like they should and gauges getting a little goofy.
So you're thinking that is unrelated from the drivability
I think
issue?
it's completely unrelated. Now, drivability-wise, pulling up to a stop sign after driving, and this thing's dying, and then she starts it up again and goes, and it's dying. I'm wondering if it doesn't have
Torque converter lockup?
the torque converter lockup, so the solenoid failing in it. This was a, infamous issue in that model transmission in thousands of cars. And we just talked about one yesterday in an Olds Intrigue that, should we replace it while we have the side cover off? Yes or no? Those are things that it's almost a maintenance item. But they do fail. You'll pull up to a stop sign. It'll pull the engine down, drag it down at its low idle, and it'll kill it. And then as soon as it dies, the pressure goes away. Solenoid falls back to its rest position. You can start the car, put it in gear. It's fine until you go down the road again.
It's the equivalent of being on a multi-speed bike in a tall gear because you've been going faster, slowing down for your intersection or stop sign and not changing your gear and then trying to keep going. Normally you would shift down and get into a more palatable gear for your legs, and in this case, you're not. And so that's kind of what's happened with that when that torque converter lockup doesn't disengage. Because when you're going down the highway in those cars, and it would lock the gears in the torque converter to keep the centrifugal force spinning the gears all together, and it helps with fuel economy, and then it just all gets that stuff moving together. And at slower speeds, it's supposed to unlock and give you a little more freewheeling and a little more ability to get your gearing that you need.
So the same as pulling up to a stop sign in fourth gear in a manual and then trying to take off
Same
in
type
fourth.
of thing. Probably more like, something like that. Yep.
Does that help you out there, David?
Yeah, he was listening along. So,
I think he bailed out.
I'm glad he called, and it sounds like a family member he's trying to help and get some good advice. We appreciate that.
The last hour of the show, we were talking to the guy with the Tacoma that had the brake noise that got the Carlson brake kit swag. And we were talking about the noise it make, and he made that Star Wars reference. We had a lot of movie references come up. Well, show contributor Greg, who's as much up on Star Wars as I am, the only thing that he's probably we're both sci-fi nuts, but the only thing he's probably more into me than it would be Batman. He would totally kill me on any Batman reference, anytime, any day, anywhere.
And I think on the collectible side of things.
Oh, for sure, for sure. But we'll have to get together and converse about the new Star Wars Ben Kenobi series that's out now. You seen that, Chris?
No.
I love it. It's good. Anyways, he said you're probably thinking of the GNK Power Droid, the Gonk droids, and that's what I was picturing in my head, but I couldn't come up with a name. So thanks, Greg.
Let's go to Mississippi and talk to George. You're on the Under the Hood show. George, what can we do for you?
Yes, I'm calling for my brother. He got a 1997 Monte Carlo 3.4, and his shifting cable that goes from where he puts it in gear in the center console has broke, and we can't find one of those things anywhere.
That's weird. I mean, they do break, but not being able to find one. Now, let me think. I don't. You know what? I think we did try to find one for a 98, which is going to be the same setup. You may not be able to buy. I think the last one we had to get from you, Shannon Nordstrom.
Yeah, and when you call an auto recycling, okay, let's just kind of go through this. Most of the time, you're going to be able to find a part like that new through an aftermarket vendor, through your favorite parts store, or on the internet, or wherever it might happen to be. There's a lot of this stuff that is definitely the shelves are getting cleaned off. They're not restocking it. The cost of these containers is so expensive. It's getting better, but it's so expensive. They're not putting a lot of C and D movers in those containers to stock them. And they're not building a lot of them because the cost of manufacturing has gotten so high. So that's just a little bit for everybody listening out there. The way I would go about this, if you've checked your normal sources and can't find one, make sure you do check the OEM dealer, because they do have a system that they can check their dealers around the country now and see if there's parts sitting in dealerships and then move it from one dealership to another. So make sure you check on that. Get a helpful parts department. I know in our town we work close with the Billions Group and stuff like that, and they're always able to, if there's something out there, they'll find out who has it sitting and get it moved between the dealerships and get it to them. So that's something to keep in mind. But if you've done all that, then you do come into the fact of you need to find out, okay, where's an auto recycler that can help me with this? The age of the vehicle is such that depending on your market, it's probably going to be in a self-service facility like at a U-Pull-It is where you're going to end up looking. And that's kind of taken over a lot of the older market of vehicles. Or you're going to have to find somebody that has one, and you're going to probably have to pay them more than you want to go investigate and find it. Because, for anybody that's out there, the labor of having people just go check on things is long gone.
Right.
I mean, you need the labor to actually be removing and dismantling and not out looking. So we, like at our facility, we are only spending our time on the items that we inventory that we know that we have. It's frustrating because we know you could help more people with things that they need, but you just can't. You can't afford to do it, and because you're going backwards on your money, and most people don't want to pay what it would actually be worth to do that. But what I would do is I would look, if you've already checked your self-service facilities, don't forget that Illumina is probably the same with a floor console. An upscale Illumina with a floor console type car in that era is going to be the same part. But look on Car Dash Part. They're one of our partners. They're one of the premier used auto part searches on the internet, car-part.com. And search for someone that has not everybody inventories that deep, but a floor shifter. Search for someone that has a console. Search for someone that has that's probably where I'd start. And then contact them and say, hey, you have this part showing.
Is the
car still there? I'd like to buy the cable out of it if you haven't cut it when you pulled the transmission out.
Right.
How much would you want to go get that cable for me? They might tell you $75, but guess what? If you don't have one and you can't buy one new,
it's cheap.
Their price is probably okay.
George, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. And if they have, one of the things that we've talked about before is if they have that part, they might not be inventorying the part that you need that's still attached.
Yeah,
it might just be there, and you have to buy the whole.
It happens all the time.
System.
You got to buy the assembly to get what you want, but you do want to make sure you check first. To understand and learn. Okay, what options do I need to have so you don't get it, and then all of a sudden it's wrong because it's in 1 year they changed the connector on one end or something.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us on the Under the Hood Show. David did hang up, but he's back. He has another question going back to that 96 Olds 98. David, you have another question?
Yes, I do. I understand the instrument cluster situation quite well after 30 years in a GM dealership, but the question I had is it a possibility that the body groundings could be not making contact and dropping signals and so on and so forth? Thank you.
Could be, for sure. I mean, those are things that you'd start with, the small ground from the battery to the body and not just the big one going down to the starter. Where that cable runs down to the starter for the ground, the heavy gauge cable, there are a couple more small wires right there as well. And a lot of times we find people, if the transmission's ever been out, they put these bolts back in and they don't get that stud completely tight. They'll put it in like finger tight, and then they'll put the nut on it and tighten the nut securely to it, but then it's wobbling around in the trans and it loses connection after a while. It gets a little corrosion built up on it. It's dirt, and it doesn't make a good connection, and that can cause issues with these gauges. Not so much the stalling, but more of a gauge issue. The stalling thing, I would, without seeing it, could be anything, but one of the first things we check is that torque converter clutch solenoid and move on.
Well, and that vehicle's system is sophisticated for its age, but by today's standards, not as sophisticated. And that vehicle, even if it was off on the ground in that body ground a little bit or something like that, it would probably it should still run okay.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree, Russ?
For sure.
It's just not as sophisticated with a CAN bus network and all that stuff that you would have on a newer vehicle. So definitely something to check right away, but I think you're going to find other problems. But we don't know the history of the car. Like I said, has it got a bunch of collision damage that was repaired at one time and they didn't get paint cleaned off where the grounds were at? Or there's different factors that would come into play. And for that one also, one of our partners, again, under Car Dash Part, you may get fortunate and find someone that, for whatever reason, didn't clean a warehouse out and has a instrument cluster sitting on the shelf that maybe just died in the corner, and they've still got it, and they'd have to dust it off. That maybe they've got that on the shelf yet.
David, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. 4150. Let's talk to Bob. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Bob, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I have a 2016 Ford Explorer with that EcoBoost motor, and I hear so much about the E15 and the E30. What can a person use in there without burning that motor up?
Well, the E15 is no problem at all. E30 is going to be a higher octane fuel with a little more ethanol content in it, and it will burn leaner because the more alcohol you have, the leaner it runs. But how lean it runs, now your engine can compensate for it if it is a modern fuel-injected engine, which is what you have in a 2016. In my car, I run E30, and I can't tell you to use it or not to use it. I can say that it is not certified for use in cars like the E15 is for 2001 up because they haven't done the testing to do that, which is super expensive. EPA is not allowing it, but I am running it in every one of my cars. And driving today, I've got a Diablo Sport scanner on my dash, and I can read fuel trims. Both my long-term fuel trims are right steady at 4. They don't move up or down while I'm driving. They pretty much stay an average of 4. 4 is great. With burning premium fuel in there, they run at 1, so that means it's adding a little bit of fuel to it. I'm at 4. That car will go up in the high 20s before it turns the check engine light on for running too lean. So on mine, I could probably run 45 or 50% before I'm going to get that thing to trip a check engine light and cause any engine damage very long term. So I'm not going to run it that high because my car gets the best mileage with the E30 in there versus 15%. At 15, it doesn't have enough octane in order for the timing to be turned up in the car to run properly, so it wants more octane. So I actually get better mileage running a fuel with less BTU because it can run more efficient. And a lot of cars, especially little turbo ones, will run better when they're doing it that way. So
They like that octane.
yeah, octane is the key. Now, when you get a flex fuel vehicle and you start getting up into the higher blends, E85, most places it's going to be about 50-55% max you're going to get out of that pump, even though it says up to 85. And yeah, you're going to lose some fuel economy. You've got to pick which blend is going to get you the best fuel economy. But as far as most cars, if the car is running properly to begin with, now I might scan a car that seems to be working pretty good, that's running 10% or no ethanol blend at all, and I look at it and I say, why are your fuel trims at +8 on both sides? It's not turning the light on. It's driving, running great, but your car has a problem. Either it needs a tune-up or it's got a vacuum leak or something. And if you go putting in any blend of ethanol, 10, 15, 20, 30, it's going to turn a check engine light on, and right away you're going to think it's the fuel that's causing it, but it's not that. Same reason that a person with, that needs a quadruple bypass surgery is fine walking down the road, but if they go for a run, they might keel over dead. And was it the run that it killed them, or was it the underlying condition that was brought out by the excessive stress? Same way with the car. So if the car is running properly and you put a scanner on it and you see your fuel trims with no ethanol in it are
which is the lean-rich balance that they measure after
all
combustion.
Scanners read it. If you get just a cheap Bluetooth plug-in $30 scanner, it's going to give you fuel trims. And if those fuel trims are right around 0, as it is now, if you're running 15 or even 30 in there, you're not going to be pushing it over that limit. And that octane might surprise you. You might try a tank at 30 and see what your fuel mileage is. Record it manually. Don't use the dash gauges. Those are wrong. And then record it with a tank of premium, and then with whatever the minimum octane it says that it can run in there, and make sure it's a full tank or a couple of them so you can get a good reading, and then see which one does best for you.
And our very strong hunch is that it's not going to be a problem for you
at all.
Bob, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. Why do they put those on the dashboard? They're never close. The economy
convenience.
But
they're cool to look at.
Yeah,
they're okay. They're close.
They're not.
They're close.
Not.
A lot of them are very close.
They're going to be within
not
what?
instant.
Okay, what do you guys call close? 1%? Are you? What kind of error rate would?
Oh.
What kind of error? No. What kind of
Yeah,
error rate
no.
would you want it to be to say it's close?
I'd say on the highway, on long trips, they're probably within 1%. But I would bet that everyday driving back and forth, filling up, doing your stuff, that your overall average is going to be probably within 3 or 4%, guessing, Chris, maybe. But those things they're all over, especially if you're resetting.
Look at my face.
It says that, but I'm just telling you, if that gauge gets me within 5%, I'm happy. It's just-
5% would be great. I
I'm,
don't
I'm,
think
I'm
mine's-
giving myself just a general idea what I'm getting.
It's a good general idea to tell you if there's been a major change, because if it normally says 23 and now it's saying 16,
That's exactly right, Russ.
something's
Yeah,
wrong. But
good point.
I wouldn't say they're great.
But I also know I can watch that gauge just for the same reason, and I can tell, oh, you know what? I've been driving a little rough. You know, my truck has a long-term fuel economy, and then it's got,
Little
current.
bar graph.
Yeah, that one's scary. But I just kind of want to know where I'm at.
Yeah.
Now, if I was going hypermiling and I wanted to really stretch this thing out, yeah, I'm not going to trust that. But for my general knowledge, I got to drive there anyway. You know, it's not like I got to watch the gauge and put fuel in it. I'm not getting really worked up about it or anything. I'm kind of getting worked up about it now.
Now
aren't
you
I?
are. You seem
Yeah.
worked up. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Mike. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Mike, what can we do for you?
Hey guys, good morning. Beautiful day in South Dakota, huh? Hey, I've got our church van. It's a 2014 Dodge Caravan. I apologize to the call screener. I thought it was a Chrysler, but it's actually a Dodge. 150,000 miles, and the transmission took a dive on us. So we're doing the classic, rebuild it, buy a new one, buy a used one out of a recycler.
Did you happen to have your AC fixed just before this went out?
I don't think so, because we haven't run the AC yet. Not been warm enough.
You better
We're in South
check
Dakota.
it. It might be broken, because in South Dakota, producer Doug's 2014 Town and Country right in there, he had the AC fixed 2 days ago. We fixed the AC. He drove from our shop 30 miles to his destination, and the trans out.
So the guy you just talked to has the identical vehicle that his transmission went out this week.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to ask you to hold on a second, Mike. We're going to take a break.
He gets a hoodie for this.
All right.
Doug's already got one. So.
No, this
No.
this guy, he's
I
going to
know.
hold on through the break, but he's getting a hoodie because this is just too fun.
All right, Mike, I'm going to put you on hold, and when we come back, I will re-answer you, and we will have your answer, or at least we'll try to get you some help with your transmission problem. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show. The phone number to reach us, 866-594-4150.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us. And if you call us and get on the show, you could win a hoodie. Mike is on hold. We just talked to him. He's actually going to get this hoodie from UTI.
Universal Technical Institute, check them out. Marine mechanics, car mechanics, boats, they're Marines, motorcycles, UTVs, ATVs, welding, all sorts of stuff that's along the transportation industry. Great place to go to get trained for that. Check out uti.edu today for more information.
All right, Mike, back to your Town and Country.
Yes,
How many miles are on this? You said 150?
150K, yeah.
Well, producer Doug's had 100 on it, and his just went bang and quit. So with these transmissions, they can work great. When I looked them up yesterday, I found transmissions that were mileage-wise. I found them as low as 30,000, and you'll find those like on Car Dash Part, but 30,000 on up to 220,000. And there were a large number of them out there that were 165, 185, 195. So that tells us
Yes.
they're going.
We've
and
seen
we
a ton
know
of
they
these all
will.
original in the 200,000 mile range.
Yeah, they're great. It's the same as the Volkswagen Touareg, the Volkswagen van, the Town and Country van, the Caravans, all that had that same model trans in it.
They use it for a bunch of years, from like 11 to 17, and
they're pretty. I would so the reman price versus
the remans were up around $3,000 last time I checked.
yes, and it was about $2,000 for a 70,000 mile use. So I would check out Car Dash Part, look into that, look at the warranties, see what they can get you for a warranty and the whole bit. And I wouldn't be afraid of a used one. If you know that you're going to try to put the engines tend to last a long time in these. So if you think you're going to put another 150,000 on the one you have now, you might not go with that 70,000 mile used. You may go with a reman and spend another 1,000 more. But there's nothing to say that reman won't only make it 100,000 miles or 150. So, I guess overall, if I was trying to save money with what's going on now with prices, maybe I would look at that. Just look at a lower mileage used one that you could find some history on.
And if you're going to buy a used component, we sell this, so I'm a homer on this stuff, of course. But some tips: if you're buying a major drivetrain component, I want to buy that from the place that dismantled it. There's a lot of people out there that broker parts.
Yes.
We broker parts from other salvage yards that dismantled the car.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of brokers that work.
And they're part of our group.
They work out of their small office, which could be at their house,
Mom's basement,
or apartment, and they broker parts and they find things for people because there's a lot of places that the staff doesn't try hard enough to find the part for them, and there's options out there, so they use what they know to resell to people that don't know. And we run into some problems with some of those people that they misrepresent the product. And so I want to know the VIN number of the vehicle that it came out of, and I'm going to run a vehicle history report on that VIN number of the dismantled vehicle to confirm the mileage is accurate, just like if I was going to buy a used car. And so that stock number that is on a unit is going to lead back to a source vehicle, and I want to know the mileage off that source vehicle, or if they had a history that showed that it had been replaced. Hopefully they have some of that either paperwork, or they can show in the verification that they found a serial number on there or a sticker that equates back to a remanufactured part that was put on. We find that often. But that's just something I'll give as advice to people out there in general across our Hoodie network. If you're buying things, don't forget that VIN number is out there. It should be given. It's a legal requirement in some states, and you can check that VIN number just like buying a used car. Now, before we let you hang up, did we answer your question? Because you never really asked it. I think we assumed your question. Did we answer it?
Yeah, I mean that's some good advice, and I mean I don't know if anyone can answer what's the best thing to do, because if it was my vehicle, depending on what I'm using, if I wouldn't want to put my wife in it, after something like this happened, then you put a used transmission in it, just like I wouldn't put youth group kids for the church in it.
We do it all the time. Seriously, for families, for churches, we do it all the time.
We've put over 10,000 of them in our own shop.
Yeah, and it typically goes, our history with a good tested unit that comes out of a vehicle that has been in an accident. Now, let me just preface that. Is typically what we look for is something that they weren't planning on getting rid of the vehicle. It was it was well maintained. That's the highest majority of the vehicles that are on the road, and we remove that. Our failure rate on those units is almost similar to a T to the remanufactured units that we sell.
Yep.
Just to throw that out there.
Is around 1% typically, and brand new, right from the dealership parts, overall is typically about 2%. So
your rate's a little
100.
lower than our rate because I think that you follow a lot of the procedures that not everybody does.
We're just,
Right. No, you're not perfect, but you're pretty close. But
we're just overdoing it.
Our general sales people that we sell to, we have a lot of people that don't always follow the proper procedures, don't do the things we're supposed to do. So our failure rate will be a little higher than that. But when we look at and compare the failure rates between reman and used, they are quite similar.
Mike, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. That is just one of those, you just have to make your decision.
Well, and the budget makes such a difference. What you have available to spend and
what's available.
And what's available. You just hit it right in the head. What can you get?
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff people want to put in a reman because it may be, in this particular case, if a quality brand name remanufactured transmission was $3,000, and the lower mileage recycled original equipment unit was $2,000. There's many people that say, geez, for $1,000, I want the remanufactured one. What if you can't get the remanufactured one?
Yeah.
What if the used one is $3,000 now because there is no remanufactured ones available because they can't get the parts? That's what's happening out there right now. Supply and demand's just driving the world crazy.
866-594-4150. We're going to Utah and talking to Cole. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Cole, what can we do for you?
Yeah, so my grandma has a 2003 Malibu, and when you go to start it, you turn it to the crank position and release it, and it sounds like the starter keeps on trying to crank for a second after you release it. And it's been doing this for 2 or 3 years now. We have no idea what's going on.
Well, when you turn it to the start position, a lot of those, they do automatically crank until the car starts. If you just turn it to start and let go of the key, it's going to crank until the engine fires up or for a preset number of seconds. But that's all determined through the body control module. It depends on which engine combination you have and transmission and stuff like that, and those vehicles on how that's set up.
If you have two different vehicles and one doesn't and one
if
doesn't,
it's
then
over cranking,
it's always an issue.
Yeah,
and you
that's
feel like an
something
idiot.
going on. But if it's been doing it 2 years, if it was a starter issue, you would think that starter would have failed by now. Something else would have gotten worse. But it could be in the ignition switch itself, which we've had plenty of problems with, or the body control module, telling it to overrun. A shop's going to have to take a look at it and see what's not disengaging, which is a pretty straightforward procedure. I wouldn't say it's simple, but it's straightforward. You're going to go to the starter and measure, do we have voltage there when we let go of the key? Are we supposed to have voltage? Because are we looking at the scanner? Does it say crank requested, yes or no? If it says no, it's not requested, but we still have voltage down there, we've got to look at the starter relay. Go up to that, and then work our way back all the way to the switch.
Going back to the beginning of your answer, though, if this were over cranking every time, it wouldn't last 3 years,
No,
would it?
it'd wear the starter out.
Right.
Are you getting any sort of a collision with the starter and the flywheel?
And it kind of sounds like it makes this really loud kind of grinding or screeching-ish noise when you turn it on.
Yeah, we need to get you to a mechanic shop and have somebody that's got just a general experience in mechanics for the last whatever years and have them listen to this.
Sounds like R2-D2 getting shot.
Not another reference I can't keep up with.
Hey, the listener got it.
It's good. That's good. I got it too a little.
Does that make sense to you, Cole?
Yeah, and we did try just like turning it to the crank and then letting go to see if it was just like keeping on spinning it then, but it just went for about a second after we released it and then stopped before it started the engine, too.
Which sounds kind of normal for the most part, but I always wonder if there is a problem with the starter and it's just the little starter that couldn't. It's still hanging in there. Because if you've got if it stays engaged, a lot of times you'll get that high-speed whining noise because the Bendix the starter drive is still engaged in the flywheel, and then finally it'll release from it. And if you're just hitting it and it's clanging at the beginning, you can wear out your flywheel. That's what we don't want to do. If this is causing problems, because that requires splitting the engine and transmission to fix it. So let's not mess around with this any longer and find out if it's just the starter. It might still be just the starter.
And if I brought it to you, you would be able to listen and go, okay, that sounds.
You pulled into my driveway,
yeah.
Which, and just said shut it off, start it. Do it every time. Yep. Okay, let me hear it. In a couple cranks, you're gonna know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is the starter's hanging up, or you're gonna say, oh, gosh, it's trying to start yet.
Cole, good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Eric in Indiana. Eric, you're on the End of the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I have an 09 Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I don't know if my buddy said that the front end to this all-wheel drive has clutches to release when you're turning or whatnot. But I was listening to one of the previous shows, and I heard something about like it can maybe be a solenoid or something like that. It's like when I turn, it wants to jump like it's in four-wheel drive, and then probably 200 miles ago it would work itself out. But I'm up. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to think the whole transfer case or.
What 09 Grand Cherokee? What model of Grand Cherokee do you have? Is it which four-wheel drive system does it have?
I'm not sure. It's an Overland.
Okay, because some of those had a almost like a full-time four-wheel drive, more aggressive setup you could get in them. Different axles. I mean, it wasn't a lot of them, but some of
the
them
Overlands
did.
have a locking rear end.
Overland sounds like that, but that they sometimes trick you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be because it's got special seats.
It
Right.
could be as simple as the clutches in the rear end are sticking on that thing because it doesn't have an additive in it. When that fluid's changed, you have to put an additive in it, and the fluid has to be changed when it's due. If you've had this thing for many, many miles and the fluid's never been changed, or if you didn't put an additive in it when it was changed, I would change the rear end fluid, and not in the front, but in the rear differential. Change the fluid, put the limited slip additive in it, and see if it goes away. Now, it could take 200 to 500 miles for it to go away once you put the additive in, because it's got to soak into the clutches and start to operate. So,
And to answer the question that you first said, and from my knowledge, and Russ will help me with this if I'm wrong, there are not a lot of commonly sold vehicles that have clutch packs in the front differential.
no.
They would typically use a solenoid of some sort, like you
Electric
said, or
locker.
like on those Jeeps, a lot of times they have a diaphragm that sits up on the front axle that will lock the axles for four-wheel drive, but it's seldom that front end is going to be set up almost like a true four-wheel drive solid axle. There's always going to be some slippage put into there. So there could be a problem there, but your most likely culprit would be in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us on the Under the Hood Show. Now let's talk to Dale. Dale, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hey guys, I got a 76 Jeep CJ5 with a 304 V8. And when it sits for a while, it's hard to start. There's no gas. So we got to crank it with starting fluid. And after an inordinate amount of time, like 5 minutes, it'll finally fire. So I'm not sure if I've got a weak fuel pump or why fuel's draining out of the fuel bowl. And then the other oddity is the fuel filter has one inlet and it's got two outlets, one that goes to the carb and the one that circles back, and I'm not sure where that goes to.
Okay, on the fuel filter setups, a lot of them have a fuel return to the tank, and it's a pressure regulator is what it is. A lot of vehicles had an electric fuel pump instead of a mechanical fuel pump, and even the ones with the mechanical pumps, some of the mechanical pumps have a return right from the pump going to the tank.
But on his 76 Jeep?
Yeah. So he's got a fuel filter, though, that's doing this same thing. And that could have been, I've never seen that on a factory on a Jeep, so I'm not sure why.
I'm just trying to think through that.
Unless they're trying to, a lot of times I don't know what they've done previous in the fuel system. It may have an electric pusher pump, a lift pump that was installed in the tank to try to eliminate the problem with the heating, for a vapor lock on there. So what they do is they apply a little more pressure to cut the vapor lock, and then they return the fuel back to the tank.
Because typically that would be a mechanical pump driving off the front drive of the engine, and you should be able to crack that fuel line loose and see if you're producing fuel to the carburetor.
Yeah.
And if you are, that's a good old-fashioned check to see am I getting fuel, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you can put a fuel pressure gauge on it.
Once it gets primed, I was going to say, once it gets primed, it runs fine. It's got plenty of fuel there. So I didn't know. I figured it was a bleed off, for pressure, and I didn't know where the regulator would be, and if do I have a fuel pump problem or do I have a regulator that's set too low, and so it's just letting everything return back to the tank, or kind of what's going on.
It's going to be regulating it at that filter, the way they've got that design with the return on it. But if you have a carburetor, now this is going back because we're talking about a classic now in the 70s, but compared to fuel injection. But if I've got a carburetor that I'm losing fuel on after it sits, I'm not worried about the line coming into it. You could take that line off and put a plastic cap in there, and you still got fuel in the carburetor. But if it's going away, I want to make sure it's not just boiling out from the heat, and then it might need a different type of gasket for a heat insulator, because a lot of them have like a fiber insulator in there.
You're talking about between the carburetor and the intake manifold.
Remember those little fibers?
Yep.
That was for the heat. So I would remove the carburetor and lift it up and make sure it's not dripping, because a lot of times those bowls would leak, and they would drip out the bottom of the bowl through the little plugs that are in there, and that would need to be repaired. And you could lose all your fuel and then have to crank it an extended period. Ways around that, you could put an electric lift pump in, just like a 2-pound electric, 1 pound, very small.
Nothing high pressure.
Nope, super low, and then you're going to return that extra line on that fuel filter to the tank. So it's going back where it's supposed to. That bleeds off that extra pressure.
So once you get it going and you take this Jeep, whether it be off-road or anything, you don't have any problems in different positions, nothing like that. It works good once you get it going.
You know, I haven't taken it off-road, but, you know, city driving, it's been fine.
That's where you need to start, I think, is really need to investigate that carburetor situation, because that was very common.
Yeah, it was super common on those, and we've had plenty of trucks and stuff that didn't have the heat insulator between the carburetor and the intake. When the gasket would start to get bad and it start to leak vacuum, people would just toss that in the garbage, and they'd put a simple small cardboard gasket in there, and then that heat, when you shut the engine off, would boil the fuel off. And since almost every gallon of gas in America now has at least 10% ethanol in it, the ethanol will burn off faster than gasoline. This is a whole different thing than fuel-injected engines, because we're not targeting gasoline engines, or the old carburetor. We're not targeting carbureted engines with ethanol. So by that being in there, you're going to get a more of a chance of vapor lock and that fuel boil with a lower heat range.
Did you have any other questions, Shannon?
Interesting.
You do, don't you?
I do have another question.
Okay, Dale, go ahead, though, before
too.
he does that.
Well, I was going to say it's somebody replaced it with an Edelbrock carb, so they probably pulled that spacer off then.
They probably did. And the Edelbrock carburetors, I've had many of them, and yes, they can leak out the bottom, so you want to make sure there's no leakage going on there. But if you don't have the heat spacer in there, yeah, the Edelbrock carburetors, I've had a couple of them on older V8 engines, and they were very susceptible to heat. The Edelbrock carburetors really do like to have a very small electric lift pump on them to provide the fuel pressure, and then one of those dial regulators right at the carburetor in order to keep that down. And then you won't have a problem. You turn the key on, you wait a second, it's full of fuel, fires right up, and you're good to go.
Dale, we have to do this. It's required.
Mm-hmm.
This is a classic, kind of a classic, so don't tell us right away, but we're going to guess what color this Jeep is. So
okay.
I really think this Jeep is red.
Red? I'm going green.
Black.
What color is your Jeep, Dale?
Russ got it.
With a red stripe.
Well, we didn't ask for overachiever stuff here.
Whoa, hold on.
I won, so I'm going for the extra.
Yeah.
Does it have any red trim on it?
The only red trim is on a label on the side of it.
Okay, that doesn't count. You can't call that right,
Yeah, it doesn't count.
What is it, like a Levi's Jeep or something?
It is, yep.
Oh, my
Okay,
God. You know the Jeep.
This guy gets a hoodie. Sorry, you win a hoodie too. Producer Doug, get this guy a hoodie.
Brought to you by our friends at United Technical Institute. We're going to give him a hoodie. UTI.
Universal Technical Institute.
Yes, Universal Technical UTI.edu.
I'm putting them back on hold. All right.
That just happened. You
right.
seriously don't know this Jeep?
No.
Oh,
I have never seen this Jeep. I've never seen this Jeep, have I?
I don't know.
I put him on hold now. He's getting his hoodie.
He's winning stuff. He doesn't want to talk to you anymore.
866-594-4150. Here's a question on the YouTube stream from Steven. The exhaust on my 2008 Chevy Colorado really stinks when I start it, maybe like unburned fuel. It has 265,000 miles on it.
Well, there's the problem.
Be lucky that it starts.
No kidding.
No.
Well, it's got 265,000 miles. It's probably got a converter that's not really doing its job much anymore. And at that many miles, you got to check the state of tune. I mean, Colorados were just about indestructible for a long time, but still, you got spark plugs, you got the basic tune-up items, and when the converters they just fail on cars. Other than getting stolen, the second most popular thing is that they just fail.
At 265,000 miles, if they haven't been replaced. Or it hasn't been replaced.
It's not going to be cleaning up they're not designed to last that long.
But that's we're going to go there. But if you've got a bad state of tune and you got a lot of unburned fuel, you can get some of that, because when you start it up, if it's not up to temperature yet, it'll go through a smell cycle sometimes. That's kind of gross. The old sulfur, rotten eggs, this fuel smell
can't work with the extra fuel dumped in.
Yeah, so you got to make sure that you're not leaking fuel by getting raw fuel. A very rich mixture of fuel in through that system. So we got to check the state of tune on this. If that all looks good, then you start putting a good look at the catalytic converter efficiency.
Well, and if that raw fuel is getting in there and it could cause that catalytic converter. I mean, that's a
Well, eventually it's going to cause it to
It'll
fail
kill
if it hasn't already.
Yeah,
If
it
it
can
has,
kill it.
if you're burning some oil over time and you don't ever do anything with it, eventually that converter's working overtime, and then it's gonna fail eventually. It said, I've done enough, and I'm done with you.
All right, this is the after show. We are now after the show. Tom Hansen from KELO TV is here. You want to introduce your camera folk there?
Carter and Jackson.
Oh, they just popped it, and I saw the hands. Yeah. Get up there. All right. All right. So we're on now. We're on our YouTube channel. So if you want to just you want to sit in the
And
chair?
podcast and all that stuff.
Is he taking over?
He can.
We
Yeah.
need to get another chair. Hang on, I'll get that.
Oh, he's got it. Yeah, we got.
Grab the stool maybe there. And
Slide that one over.
Take my chair. Mine's changed. You're gonna want this.
This is temporary. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. Now we're going to play a game of musical chairs. Carter and Jackson, you're going to be involved. When the music stops, will you have a chair? People wouldn't see you, Chris. Sorry.
All right. There you go, Tom.
Well, this is like old times for you and me.
Yeah, Tom and I have done shows together.
What shows when?
The Chris and Doc show.
And he just came in and
I
hung
used to
out?
fill in. Fill in.
You do better than him?
No. No.
I'd say yes.
Sure.
I just
Yeah.
just to
He's
get
like
him
my
going.
mentor.
He's my mentor too.
Yeah. All right. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
We're not sure what right? I mean, you
What's
called
going to
yesterday,
happen here?
said, yeah,
Do we
what-
we have no idea.
Now, are you guys still taking calls now?
We can.
If somebody called now, we would talk to him.
Okay.
And we would capture the call and use it for the producer to be able to form into a podcast or to go into. Sometimes we have a local commercial that needs to get pulled out and replaced with a national commercial. So we're looking for some content. So we take calls when they come in and we'll save them and use them for other spots.
Sure. Okay, got it. Well,
Otherwise,
you
we
want me to
just sit here in
ask
the
you
after
guys
show
some
and
questions?
we just talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just ask
Yeah.
you guys some questions?
You
Yeah.
bet.
Okay. So, how did this get started?
Oh, you're asking me how it got started. I'm more of the guy. I could tell you the whole thing, but
Is it?
Shannon started this with his mom and his company, so he's better at the beginning.
I'll give
story.
you the Cliffs Notes version.
All right.
Because
Oh,
when
boy.
I
Start the
started,
clock.
I started the show in 1990 by myself.
You were by yourself.
Yep. And we started the show over at KSOO as the Nordstrom's Cars and Parts Show in 1990. And it was an idea that my mom had at the time when she was out custom windrowing the neighbor's alfalfa, listening to the radio, listening to Wayne Pritchard on the radio. And she said, you know what? We should have a car show that would help promote our then growing little salvage yard. At the time, it was probably more of a junkyard. And that is what gave the impetus for them to go down to the show, to the studio, and say, hey, would you guys be interested? Because my dad knew the guys because he was on the fair committee for the tractor pull. And so he, and Houston Speedway, he's in the Hall of Fame at the Houston Speedway, so he knew all the people from the fair. And so he had talked to them. And so he went down there and he said, hey, we know Wayne Pritchard. He's interviewed me before for the tractor pull and for the demolition derbies and different things, and said, we're interested in doing a car show. And the station said, you know, this talk format is a thing that's kind of coming, and we've been thinking about it, talking to dealerships, and they didn't really know for sure if they wanted to let a service writer be gone for a half hour or whatever it would be. And they ended up putting a 19-year-old kid on the air, and this is not probably verbatim, but they said, who would do the show? And my mom said, my son would do it. And they said, well, what experience does he have? And they said, trust me, he can do it. And I sounded a little prepubescent when I did the first show, probably, and I didn't know a ton of stuff, but I had been around this my whole life, so I can answer a lot of good general questions. By far not a technician by any means. And so I've learned from Russ and others that have come along. Russ joined us, wasn't too many years after that, and then we moved the show to KELO AM, and so that was an opportunity that gave us an opportunity then to expand. And so Russ had it in his head that after I asked him to come as a guest once, I said, hey, why don't you come down? He was working for us in the service department area, and I said, "Why don't you come down? You're a smart guy. You got a decent voice." I'd heard he'd done some Night City disco jams type of stuff, and I thought, he could do this. I met him from fixing a flooded Lexus that from our floods we had in Sioux Falls back in the 90s, and he was able to put this car together that nobody else even wanted to look at, just because my friend Ron Saber said, Russ works for us down at the radio shop here. He could figure this out. Maybe we got some room in the back of the shop. We'll set it in there. And we fixed up this 1990 Lexus LS 400, and that's how I got to know Russ. And so put him on the air, and then he never left. Couldn't get rid of him. And he's like, hey, we should do more with this. We always had ideas that we could expand it to something else, and we tried a couple things that didn't work. We had a few crash and burns, and with the help of KELO Radio and our own desire, with I think Russ putting a push on it as he got involved, we were able to start some local syndication, and that grew, and plenty of events in the middle that could take all day to tell. But eventually we were able to build up the syndicated network around the Midwest, and then that spread out. And of course, podcasting is the thing. And so we've been podcasting, and now since we moved into our new studio here, we built this during COVID. I shouldn't say we. Russ built this during COVID. All the electronics and everything he figured out with the help of vendors. He became a studio engineer. He figured all this out, just like he figured out that Lexus. And with the help of Kitchens and Windows Unlimited to make some equipment or some tables and desks and different things that we needed, some studio equipment, we built ourselves a studio that has all the things now for the video content. And so we can track the microphones when we're talking, so it moves, and we can on a lower budget create at the same time a live radio feed going back to KELO Radio. We've got a captured audio that we can use to create our podcast, and we're streaming live video and capturing video for smaller segments at the same time. And so when we sit down here on Thursdays, that's when we produce all of this content. And so we're able to create a bunch of products out of one thing. How's that? Was that Cliff's Notes?
So, Chris, did you ever think that this would turn into what it has?
Yeah, as a matter of fact. I joined the show in 2005 through a personnel change at the radio station. So I kind of got thrust into it. Just one day, all of a sudden, I was the new host of the Under the Hood show. And I listened to the show. I knew the guys from the hallway, just seeing them every week. And after the first hour that I was on the show, when it was over, I knew that it was a good spot. And I think these guys, we even talked about it, I think that day after it was done. I went, well, that went pretty well. And they were like, yeah, well, that worked great. We'll see you next week. And they were doing some syndication, and we had even talked about that because I had been in radio for a long time. And yeah, I kind of saw it growing. I could see it growing naturally. And like Shannon said, a few things happened where it would grow exponentially just through circumstance and chance. And that's how we ended up we're on over 240 radio stations nationwide now. And same thing, this show gets recorded on video and audio, and our producer puts it together and sends it out to those radio stations via satellite and via the internet. And it just has grown it's grown progressively steady, and then every so often something would happen that would just jump up the numbers very quickly. And it has just grown and grown, and it's been fun to be a part of.
And I think, my mom, who had the idea to start this, of course, she's our prayer warrior for the entire company. So I think she's been praying along, and we've been praying along too. So I think some of these things that happened weren't by chance. They were a little bit of God wink, as one of my friends in Garrettson would say, that happened too along the way to open some doors.
And Russ, there seems to be a really good chemistry between the three of you. Talk about that.
Oh, yeah. When we've done the show with just one of us, Shannon, I threw Shannon in here last Labor Day. Chris was gone. I was gone, and it was sudden for Chris, and he's like, what do I do? Because down at KELO, it was no problem. You walk in, it's set up, you just do it. Well, here, like you said, we've got all this electronic stuff we've got to coordinate. So here I am driving down the road on speakerphone, trying to think in my head. And, as DJs, a lot of us have in here, you've done it. You just walk in and you just reach and you're pushing buttons, and it's just a memory thing that you do. But when you're trying to then talk about it, if I ask Chris, how do you do the Chris and Doc show? Well, you got to push. And it's tough. So with all of us, it's amazing. I think the show is great. I think it's one of the best shows on the radio out there. With three of us, with two of us, it's okay. With one of us, it's good. It's not bad at all. It's helping you get advice, but it is not the Under the Hood show. When you put all three of us on here together, it's great. I mean, you got three of us. We're friends. We are the same off the air as we're on the air, and we just have a really great time. And listeners pick that up. Listeners here, when we're trying to give them advice about their car, they know they can trust us because we talk as much about the stuff that's no good for your car as the stuff that is good for your car. All the products we talk about on the show, we use in our own shop. If we don't use them in our shop and they don't work for us, we won't talk about it.
Shannon, what do these guys bring?
Well, when I look at our chemistry, it's really neat the way it works together because Russ is, and I mean this with every bit of as a compliment, he is way too smart for his own good. He's just one of them guys that can figure out anything if you give him the time to think about it and study it. He's going to figure it out. And he also was blessed by the good Lord with a memory that is, as we say, to the color of the wire most of the time on what he's going to remember when he tells somebody something. And when sometimes Chris and I look at each other and say, did that just happen? Because he'll recall to tell him to grab the blue wire. It's almost like he's on a movie telling him how to defuse the bomb. And he'll tell him that. And I oftentimes I used to go back and I would have somebody check just to see if he was just BS and getting away with it. But the highest majority of the time, he's right on the money. And so super smart guy and just can really help people with things of such a range of topics. Because in his young life, he's been involved with airplanes. He's been involved with boats. He's been involved with old Model T that he's restored that his family had. He's been involved with, we did a business called Factory Performance where we were putting late model motors into older vehicles, and he kind of became an expert on all of that, and plus just keeping up with ASC certification on all the modern cars. So he brings that super intelligent, the nickname is a super tech. We don't use it as much anymore, but that was what we did early on with that, and that's what Russ brings to the table. And he's good at what he does, and he's got a good voice for radio. He's got a good personality for radio, and Chris brings in, I would say, the voice of the people and just his good nature. I mean, he's got such a good nature, and he's learned a lot. We let him answer questions on his own quite often now because he's learned a lot because he's a good student, and he learns a lot, and he's got a lot of questions. And I've been around automotive stuff my entire life. I grew up on this farm that's turned into this automotive disassembly plant that we sell parts all over the country, and so I ask a lot of questions. I worked the sales counter for a lot of years. I inventoried cars for years. I never full-born dismantle all the time, but we took parts off of cars. I do side projects. And so you've got enough general knowledge that we like to be able to tell people things that we're going to give you ideas and advice. It's not going to have the slant of you got to go here all the time. It's not going to be the slant you've got to, no, you can only buy this new thing. You can only buy this used thing. You can only buy this remanufactured thing. I like to say from the center of the wheel, we're going to give you advice. Because where our business is at and what we do, Russ manages a service center for the company of Nordstrom's. I run the auto recycling facility. Chris comes from the radio world, and he's the voice of the people. Together, we can give you a good centric opinion of what you should consider doing. And we're not trying to sell anything. We're just trying to keep people aware of options that they have. We tell them we want them to be good consumers of the automobile. We want them to be able to understand what they're doing. And so we prefer all callers. But it's really nice when somebody calls in and says, I don't know anything about my car. We'll say, that's okay. We're going to help you. Don't be intimidated. We're going to have some fun. But not like, the Car Talk was an amazing show with Click and Clack just because it became so deep into pop culture. But there was shows you could listen to theirs, and they hardly ever answered a question with any seriousness because they were just having fun with the callers or making fun of them or whatever it might happen to be. We try to find a balance between that, between the craziness of just everything's going to be a joke to some good, solid advice so people can save money. Because it's serious right now. For what it costs for fuel and what auto repairs are costing and vehicle replacement costs, people need ideas. They need options because their typical way of doing things is disrupted in a horrible way. And so understanding other options that are available to people, that's what this show is all about. And that's what's kept it going for so many years, is just keeping people educated about their car and what options they have.
Chris, do you find that, so you're the voice of the people, working with two guys who know so much, so you kind of have to back up and go, okay, if I'm sitting at home listening to the radio, what do I want to know?
I always say that the strength of our show is someone will call in and say, I have a 2008 Ford F150, and this is the problem. Russ will say, make sure you check that blue wire, because on that year of F-150, it sometimes got pinched when they would change the oil filter. And then Shannon would say, we sell a lot of transmissions from that year, so make sure that this isn't happening so you don't have to replace the transmission because that blue wire affects the transmission. And then I say, I don't have that truck. How does that affect me? And then they can say, you have to change the oil regularly. You have to do this, do this. If you don't drive that type of car, what we're talking about is the transmission itself. And when you put an automatic transmission in, you have to do this. So we kind of hit all those things because we can come at it from all those different angles.
Russell, what's it like knowing that you're answering questions from across the country? And then where's your favorite place to get a call from?
Well,
I'm interested in this answer.
For me, when I'm exactly opposite of Shannon. Shannon can stand in front of a room with 1,000 people and look at everybody in the eye, and that's where he feels is most comfortable because he can see their reactions. For me, I don't want to stand up in front of a crowd of people. I really don't like it. We've done it a couple times on stage where the show has gone out places. I'm not comfortable with it.
He does fine with it, but
I do it, but I'm inside going, this is crazy. Everybody's, everybody's in their underwear, right? That's what they used to tell you in school. I don't like it. On the air, I know I'm talking to people, but it doesn't really hit me until I'm from Texas, so I go back home to Longview in the area, and I'm listening to the radio, turning the dial, and the show comes on. And I hear myself, and I said, this is really weird that I'm here, and I'm hearing the show. Wherever I go in the country, I'm able to turn it on. Pretty much, you can catch it. And that's weird for me. And when we get calls, if I get a call from around the hometown area, one of the cities there, that's always fun. But calls for me that are fun, we occasionally will pick up long ones. We've got a guy named Hassan from Bahrain. He calls in, a few times a year. That's great. He's calling live from Bahrain. We've got guys that have called in from Australia several times. So those really far away.
Jack called in during Desert Storm.
Yeah, he had taken a transport and all these different vehicles to get to a phone to call us. He says it took me an hour to finally get to a phone where I could call you. That was a lot of fun. But just being able to help people from anywhere, whether they're right here in Sioux Falls where we're at or across the world, we're glad to help people out. And everybody has the same thing. They want to save money fixing their car. They want to operate it as cheap as possible. A lot of people are getting fuel questions now because with the price so high, people are willing to try new options. And if they've always been against ethanol for whatever reason it may be, now they don't care. They want to know if it's not going to kill my car, I'm going to put it in there. And then they want to call us and say, I did it. Is it okay? I've already done it.
And typically the answer is yes, it's fine.
Yeah, so we're just really glad to help people out, and we have a lot of fun at it. And so calls in general, any call is fun for us to take.
All right, hold on. I'm going to make an executive decision here, and we're going to end the after show, the YouTube stream, and then we'll let Tom finish what he has to do. Does that make sense for everyone?
That's good. The people out there watching the after show, they're probably going, oh, come on, we want to see more of this. But
all right, so
it's done.
Everybody on YouTube, thanks. Make sure you subscribe. Now, like we said, you don't have to actually watch. Just subscribe because it helps other people find it. So
watch like 5 seconds. Yeah.